Hello and welcome back. I am excited because today I have a special guest on the channel from the Australian Ninja Warrior, where he is deemed the Dirt Ninja, the winner of the Challenge Australia. And at the time of recording this, he is the top 5 teams of the Challenge World Championship. Everybody, Troy, thank you for being here and chatting with me today. How are you doing?
Hey, no dramas. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's pretty early over here where I am, so got up nice and early for this, and I'm excited to talk with you.
Well, thank you for sacrificing sleep to chat with me about the challenge. I do want to bring up before we talk about the challenge, I was watching some of your highlights and runs from Ninja Warrior on YouTube today. I think the one that really stood out was the 2020 semifinals.
Yeah.
What made you want to compete on a show like the Australian Ninja Warrior?
To be honest, I've done gymnastics my whole life, and when I saw the American Ninja Warrior before Australia Ninja Warrior was even a thing, I was just like, man, I want to do that. And then next thing you know, Australian Ninja Warrior came out, and I was lucky enough to have a bunch of mates who also did gymnastics, and they were like, yeah, all right, we'll train too. And we actually found a ninja gym. Yes, there's things called ninja gyms around it, especially heaps in the USA. And then we found a ninja gym, and then we just started training and creating a real fun environment to train rather than just going to the gym and lifting iron, I guess, lifting weights. So that's how I got into the whole thing.
Sweet deal. I mean, I will say that like watching reality shows forever, it's a real different experience watching like Ninja Warrior, even just like the US version or any version. It seems like it's a very collaborative, everybody's always rooting for everybody. So is that so much like how different is it playing in the challenge where it seems like everybody's trying to stab you in the back, coming from Ninja Warrior, who everybody's like rooting for you to beat them, essentially is like,
Beat the
yeah, beat my
course,
time, go forward.
Yeah, it's a lot different. It's like, as you said, everybody's just rooting for you to beat the course, and it's really supportive and that sort of thing. And then you go into the thing like the challenge, and then you're living with people. You got to deal with different personalities, totally different. And the good thing about Ninja Warrior, I guess, for me that I loved is that and it's a bit different to the challenge, is you get one shot. Like if you fall in or early, like you're done. That's it. And it is one of the most highest pressure things I've ever done in my life. Like, you dream about it, like, yes, I'm going to go on Ninja, and then it's finally the time, and you get up on stage, and there's this massive course, and it's way bigger in real life than it is on TV. Like, it is massive. And you get there, and the nerves are boiling, and you're like, oh my God, you're sweating, and you don't want sweaty hands because then you'll slip off. And you're just like, oh, and then you get up there and you hear the countdown 10, and then it's what you've trained for. Everything just goes really calm for me anyway. It did really calm, and you just go attack this course knowing that you literally can't stuff up. And it's hard to describe the pressure you're in. And whereas in the challenge, and that's where I like the challenge as well, is, you do your daily challenges and you come last, you still got the opportunity to come back in again. Whereas on Ninja Warrior, you don't have that. Except unless you're in elimination in the sand, which is where I felt like the experience of Ninja Warrior really helped me on the Challenge Australia and on the Challenge World Championship when I was in the sand, because I felt like I was able to stay calm because of my experience in Ninja Warrior. But man,
this kind of leads into my next question was, how much of your skills and training do you do for Ninja Warrior would you say has helped you on the challenge? And you said like the pressure, the stress, is you're made for that moment, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's honestly what I feel like. And a lot of people wouldn't relate that to Ninja, which is why I like pointing it out, because it is literally one shot. And, in a daily challenge, you get multiple shots. Whereas in an elimination, that's more of what Ninja Warrior feels like. Still not the same. I still feel like Ninja Warrior for some reason is just next level. You're just up on that stage. You're the only person on that stage, But yeah, obviously everything else is pretty obvious. You're nimble, you're strong for your size. All those sorts of things obviously come to play in a challenge. As for puzzles and that sort of thing, there's not really many puzzles in Ninja Warrior. I mean, some of the new obstacles they're coming up with now, though, are pretty puzzling. But yeah, as for that there was no real training Ninja Warrior wise for that, but I definitely did train my puzzles before coming on.
I think one daily challenge from Australia that really like stood out to me, that made me think of like Ninja Warrior and how that translated like almost one for one, was, I can't remember the name of the daily,
Truck it.
but it was the truck one, the truck daily challenge, where you just like you beamed it. You got the baton, you ran it, and then you just smacked it, and everybody else was having a really difficult time, even in the US version. And I just was like, yeah, that's the ninja training right there, then and there.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you couldn't have had a more perfect one for me, pretty much. Like, that's not my wheelhouse. Normally, I'd do those pegs without my feet touching. So, like, when my feet was touching, I mean, mind you, it was on the side of a moving truck. So that was pretty scary. That was also a pretty cool challenge. But, you know, so I had my feet on, and I was just like almost barely using my feet, just enough to just help me out a little bit. And I was just like, shoop, 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 you know, like a monkey under it. And, you know, that's a perfect example of just my wheelhouse. Like, you know, that's my thing. But I felt more nervous for that daily than any other daily I've done my entire challenge career, because everyone beforehand was like, oh, you're going to smash this. Oh, this is your wheelhouse. You're going to win. Rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, shit. I can't imagine if I fell off. Like, I was so nervous. It was like, that was actually one of the moments I did feel like that Ninja Warrior pressure, because I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of my one shot to prove, you know, I'm actually a ninja and I can do this shit. So I thought that was a really fun moment. And I think Emily is also liking that with her swimming, you know, although she probably doesn't feel nervous. She is an Olympian. So, man, swimming, she can swim. She's a dolphin. So I felt like, yeah, anyway, that was just my wheelhouse, and like swimming is for Emily.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a lot of daily swimming challenges, at least in this world championship one. Not so much pegs and anything for your wheelhouse, kind of like the truck it daily challenge. But before we get into episode 10, I do want to ask, because it's intriguing that we've barely ever seen like a spin-off and then people going directly into yet another challenge. It's always like there's some waiting time, or like a questionable period of if we would ever see people back. But I want to ask, like, how has competing on the Challenge World Championship differ than when you competed on the Challenge Australia? Like, were you more nervous for coming onto the World Championship because of the level of competition and like with the global MVPs and MTV legends? Or did you feel like maybe a little bit more comfortable because you had done a season of the challenge already?
A little bit of both, to be honest, because I felt like the level of competition in the Worlds was absolutely astounding. You know, there wasn't, you know, one pushover team. You know, I think the Argentinian teams maybe weren't just with it quite early enough, but I still don't think they were pushover by any means. I just think they were off in fairyland at the start, but that was definitely a bit more nerving and a bit harder, because everybody you verse, whether it be an elimination or a challenge, they're good and they're gonna go far. Whereas on the Challenge Australia, you had, you know, a few teams and people that you felt like, oh, you know, I should win this. Like, even when I first went on there, I'm like, oh, sweet, I reckon I'm a good shot of winning the whole thing. I just need to keep my nose out of trouble type thing. And I felt like, you know, I just needed to not be a social threat, because I was already a bit of a physical threat inside the game, not size wise, but just ability wise. So I was trying to keep my nose out of all that drama and stay away from it, which, you know, I want to do anyway. So that was sort of my strategy leading into that. And it was a very similar strategy in the Worlds, you know, just keep trying to keep my nose out of the drama and just get to work pushing. But I felt like drama followed you on this one, because you had to publicly vote. Like, you were going to be in it no matter what. But what I loved about the Worlds compared to Challenge Australia is the Challenge Australia got really, really personal. Like, it was totally different vibe than the Challenge World Championship, where it was just like almost business. It was like, okay, well, you're against me in the game, but, you know, you could still go around and have a coffee with them or play chess against them or whatever it may be. Whereas in the Challenge Australia, the house was actually divided into two, and those sides just weren't talking to each other at all, not even in the slightest, not even saying hello to each other. Like, it was bad. So as for what I prefer the Challenge World Championship. Was it more nervous and harder and the competition better? Yes. And what you said before as well, obviously competing on a Challenge Australia, I felt like it definitely helped with the Challenge World Championship.
So that's super interesting, because we did see that in the edit. Me and my Patreon actually watched through the whole the Challenge Australia together. We did see like this house divide, and sometimes when in the more recent seasons there has been like this maybe more conglomerate group that maybe you've seen on this other season, this world championship season, that kind of glob together and then kind of bull through this game and become their own numbers with everybody else a kind of an outlier. So to us, we were actually intrigued seeing there being two big alliances. But what do you think? Because you say there's a different vibe where it's like that people can still be against each other and still vote each other in, but can have a cup of coffee. Do you think that that's just experience of having played before and playing with other experienced challengers that have just been like, yeah, this is just run of the mill, compared to the Challenge Australia cast, which is just like all rookies. They're coming from like a dating show that you never really have to do anything like this. And so they took it a little bit more personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it was clear that, yeah, the vets had done it before and they knew what they were in for. And you're right, they were all just rookies and they didn't quite know what they're in for and they took everything personal. But I also think, there were personal attacks in the Australian one, whether it were, whoever it was attacking whoever personally. I don't want to go into that. That's all drama stuff. But I felt like there was a lot of personal attacks, whereas in the Challenge World Championship, people aren't coming after your mum or whatever. I'm not saying that's what happened on the Challenge Australia, but, they don't bring your outside world into it as much or at all, really. So I felt like that made it a lot more easy as well to be about the game, and people were happy to be against each other in the game. Whereas you saw it like night one of the Challenge Australia when, Audrey got her bed stolen and that blew up, and that was actually a big fight, and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's just a bed, like just go sleep somewhere else, especially night one. You don't want to put a target on your back for having an argument straight away. Anyway, yeah, it was just a whole totally different vibe, and I reckon, yeah, you're right, it was partly because they were rookies and partly because of the things that were said between the two groups.
I wanted to ask, so you're definitely coming in with Kiki because you guys won, which congratulations, by the way. I'm so happy that you two won. You did incredible job, especially you who did like 4 dailies and then going through one of the most grueling pole wrestle variances we've ever seen on the challenge.
Yeah, that was brutal. That went on for like an hour and a half.
Holy heck.
That the first round was 30 minutes or 35 or something minutes, and that was a bit shorter because Conrad was like going out a lot harder, so I could use, like, I wore him out quicker, and he's like 6'3" and 100 kilos, so I managed to wear him out a bit quicker. And then the second round was about 55 minutes, and that was, he changed his strategy up totally, and hats off to him because he was just pounding me in the dirt. He was smothering me. He was really using his weight well, and I just had to battle that one out. And as you said, it was a tough run in Australia for me going into the final, because that was pretty grueling thing to do before that, and I was banged and beaten up. Like, I didn't put makeup on. That they weren't fake scratches and whatnot. That was literally me banged and beaten up. But luckily, I got the job done, so I didn't look too stupid in the end.
Oh yeah, but it's just like it's crazy because you played such a great game leading into that. Like, you won 4 dailies and then was never like nominated, never saw another elimination until the very end, and then it was the hardest elimination,
the worst. Yeah. But that was, I always knew that was part of my strategy. I knew that they'd wake up to me eventually. I'm surprised that the animosity between the two groups was so much. I think that allowed me to go under the radar. I think they did see me as a threat, but they just weren't thinking strategically. I think had they go back now and do it, I reckon they'll probably all be trying to get me out pretty early on. So that was definitely part of my strategy, was to be like, okay, you can't hide the factor of physical threat, or like a threat in a game. But I was like, okay, I'm just not going to be a social threat, and we'll see how it goes. And as I said, I was very lucky in a sense that those other two sides were fighting like so heavily that they just couldn't let that go, for the sake of the game, I guess.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I think your win is super impressive because we've seen players come into the challenge, and I'm not trying to say anything, but it's like you're a little bit more undersized than some of the other contestants that were on there. And so normally that's like easy pickings for people. They're just like, oh, I think I can take that guy. he's smaller. We're just going to keep sending him in. He's not that big of a threat. Yet you were able to, like you said, play a great social game, kind of weaving in and out of the drama, and then not have any shots taken at you until the very end. And by that time, it was too late. Like, you were able to just pull that out and then get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't expect it much from a smaller competitor. And, you know, I did try and play that off. And even in Worlds, I'm trying to play it off that, you know, I'm only short, I'm not that strong. But I'll tell you right now, you know, the one thing about, well, in particular for me, about being short and, you know, doing gymnastics and ninja and all this thing is I've got a very, very good power to weight ratio. And I can definitely hold my size. Like, and yeah, as you saw, you proved it in a pole wrestle. But it's one thing I want to, you know, sort of tell everybody is, yeah, I'm 5'6", I think. 5'6". I'm tiny and 65 kilos, but just because you're tiny and you're not that big, it doesn't mean you can't win this thing. You know, the size factor isn't everything in the game. You know, you got to be mentally strong. You got to be good at puzzles. You got to have a decent social game. The only time size massively comes into it is in a pole wrestle, which luckily, as I said, I'm very strong for my size, or in like a hall brawl, or maybe even a balls in, and those types of things. So they're just the eliminations I've got to try and avoid. And then the eliminations, every other elimination, I'm pretty comfortable and happy with. Mind you, you know, you should always try and prevent being into elimination, which I'm not doing a very good job of this season. Did a very good job of in my Australian season, but not in this one. But yeah, you know, I also think, you know, you got to not be afraid of it, and you just got to attack it with all your might and see it as a bonus round, you know.
We'll get into it very soon, but I mean, I'll say that you going into eliminations is more of Casey's deal. I mean, she already was in elimination with Ben early on, and then when you didn't start going into elimination until you're partnered up with Casey. So I don't think it's on you.
I think it is. I think what did I call it? I rattled the bear, I guess, and and they didn't like me anymore. That's Emily, of course. You know, and I don't blame her for it. You know, as I said, there's no animosity for me outside the game, but you know, it was clear to me that she was coming after me in the game ever since episode 5, and you know, I wasn't coming after her even after I voted her in, because for me, Grant was like my man and my trustworthy area, and that as long as Grant was there, I was gonna ride through with Australia the whole time. And the second he went home, I just felt like I don't know, I just couldn't trust her, and that was fine. I knew that Grant was gonna, like, well, I wasn't certain, but I was pretty sure there was gonna be no elimination. So when I voted for Emily, it was more of a statement thing, like, hey, I'm sorry, like, I don't trust you. This is what it is, type thing. And I didn't feel like my voice was being heard in the alliance, and that's more of what it was. And it was just to show that, hey, I'm not with you anymore. I'm gonna go do my own thing.
That's interesting, because I did listen to, I don't know if you listened to it, but I listened to the Challenge Official podcast before coming on here. And Yes and Emily were the guests, and it seems like Emily had some I don't know, has carried some animosity a little bit of more towards you than, say, like Kiki, where we saw kind of that rivalry in the beginning of the season. But now it's like on the Challenge Official podcast, she really has mended fences with Kiki for the most part. And then for you, I think she described you as the ex-boyfriend that cheats, and everyone is surprised because they thought that you were such a nice guy.
But hold on, Troy is throwing shit. Little innocent, quiet.
Okay.
Yeah, innocent.
Troy. Okay.
Too smart.
Have you ever had that guy? You've dated that guy, and like maybe they like fucking cheated on you, and they're like, that guy, he's so nice. He's that guy. He's that.
Ooh, not you calling Troy a cheater.
I listened to that too, and I'm not going to throw shade at Emily, but
yeah.
Man, I've been in a relationship for 12 years. I know she didn't mean it that way. I've been in a relationship since high school for 12 years, and you know, not once have I cheated. So that comment is a bit unwarranted. I think what she was trying to say is I'm the nice guy and I might stab you in the back. But I guess that's because, as I said before, you know, I can separate the game from emotions, and I'm still happy to talk to you outside of, you know, the game. And maybe she felt like, because I was still talking to her even after that, nothing about the game after that, but maybe she felt like, I don't know, I was just putting on a kind face. But that's just me. I'm just going to treat you like a human no matter what, even if we're not on each other's terms in the game. Yeah, I really didn't like that comment at all from her, but you know, I know she regrets it, and she has since messaged me and apologized. So while she didn't do it, publicly. I really appreciate that message. She reached out to me and apologized, and yeah, it is what it is. I don't know what I did. She said in the same podcast, she said I dogged her on the Australian season. I don't know, but yeah, that was a very odd comment. Like, I didn't realize she had it out for me on the Australian season, but those were the vibes I felt like I was getting, or that's the feeling I was getting from her on the World Championship, which is why when I was with Grant, I was happy, and I even said to them, like, I want you both to make finals. I want Australia to make finals. And that all part of that is true. And then I just felt like as things were playing out, that trust was broken down after the first episode when, Kiki got thrown in. Yes, I knew about it. Yes, I knew it was going to happen. Yes, I acted cool afterwards because I don't want to sit there and be like, oh, I'm not cool with this afterwards. And you know what I mean? But I was like, yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. But, ever since then, I was wary, and I probably was all good with it at the time. But as I said, the second I knew Grant was going, I was like, nah, like, I don't know. I just felt like I couldn't trust it, and I needed to be out of there. I just felt like I couldn't trust Emily, and that's what it come down to. And, inside the game, I'm sure she doesn't trust me now, especially. And that's just where we're at. So I did hear whisperings that turned out maybe to be wrong. I'm not sure. Leading into the vote, I did go against her. Because obviously the episode before we had Ben saying he was saying, oh, I'm the bottom of the barrel and all the rest of it, which, let's be honest, I am. She literally came in openly and said on the podcast, oh, me and Grant made a deal with Sarah or not deal, but we were with Sarah and
Danny,
that's it. Yeah, sorry, I don't know how I forgot Danny. He's been in every episode, that literally front and center. Anyway, with Sarah and Danny, and they were literally like, oh yeah, we're number 1 and 2. That's number 1 and 2, sweet. And they almost had this 1, 2, 3, 4 thing. Like, they were all each other's number 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. And it was clear as day. So yeah, I felt like I was at the bottom as well. So that was part of the reason why I voted the way I did in episode 5. And the other part, because I knew that by the time the numbers came later on, like now, I'd be thrown into every elimination is what I felt like. And if I start voting out these Tristan and Kellyanne's now that I can work with and I actually really like as humans, and I trust, I felt like I was trusting a lot more than Emily. If I can work with them now before they get sent home, I might actually have numbers to do something in this game, because I felt like at that stage, Sarah and Danny weren't doing anything for us because they were just at odds with their partner the entire time. So we were trying to go for Jordan and we couldn't even get him because, well, you saw that. I'm not blaming Sarah or Danny for this either. I just think that they weren't helping us out, and it was almost like Australia was doing their dirty work for them in a way, I guess, voting. But it wasn't dirty work; it was all part of the strategy. But I just felt like as it went on, I was just getting told less and less of who to vote for. And Emily said we had this plan heading into episode 5, and I flipped it or whatever. I flipped it, which it did happen. It did flip, but there was no plan. Like, I asked her who to vote for, and she wasn't telling me. I'm like, well, what's the deal? Like, who are we trying to go for? What's the plan? I know we might not get it, but what are we voting for? And I don't remember her telling me who to vote for, and that just, for me, I was like, nah, okay, I don't quite trust it. And then we hear that apparently they were going to somehow vote us in, and, I jumped at that and I was like, okay, well, that says she's not with me. And this is like the 3rd, 4th time we've heard it from Casey and Tori, I think it was. And maybe that was a strategy for them. Maybe it was totally fabricated. I'm not sure because it wasn't in the edit, so it could have been. But I think for me, still, I'd probably do that move again. Would I? Yeah, probably would, because as I said, the trust there was already broken for me, and it was just, it was a big shit show, that episode. It really was. But and she's like, oh, you don't know what side I'm on, and it's like, okay, well, clearly you did after that episode, like, and even leading in, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant here. Even leading into like this episode, like, I knew she was coming out after me, and I should have defended my case better. But she said, oh, like, do you want to do a deal? Open me up for a deal. So I'm just like, nah, I don't want to do any deals with you. Like, I'm against you type thing. Not against her. Like, I wasn't specifically going for her, but I was against her alliance at that stage. I'm like, I'm not going to help you out next time. Like, if you want to pick me, you pick me, and it's on type thing. Like, but I'm not going to help you out. I'm not going to do deals with you. That wasn't me. It's like, I'd pick my side, and I'm happy to be on that side. I had a great time with Tristan and Kellyanne and Jody and Benha and all that. And unfortunately, through sickness, we lost our numbers, and it was just so bad after that. That sucked. That ruined the game for myself and Amber. Well, obviously because she went home, but
I have to say that I think like I don't fault you for making those moves because it's clear to see, at least through the edit of the audience's eyes. And I've heard through some of the interviews that like Emily and Sarah and like even Danny kind of like stuck with each other and were like so tight with each other that it was kind of hard to penetrate them or like to be social with them at certain times. So I think at certain times you have to like be able to pivot. You know, you have to take your shot and take your move that you think is the right move. And I think you just did it. It's just that sometimes in a game of the challenge, it's like luck, and it just luck wasn't there for you.
Yeah, well, it was pretty dumb though too, to be honest, because I knew it was a non-elimination rig, so I was just like giving her a heads up anyway. And she's like, "Oh, you know, she backstabbed me, she blindsided me," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm not going to turn around and tell you I'm about to vote for you as well." Like, I don't think that's a good move. I think that's not a smart thing to do in a challenge, especially because then they've got time to flip it on you type thing. So I don't know. Yeah, why she'd expect a heads up, you know, and she didn't give me a heads up when she voted for me later on, you know. So, I mean, I get I'd already separated her, but I'm not going to blame her for that. As I said, you know, what happens inside the game for me stays inside the game. And like, I did say something on Instagram. It wasn't even, I didn't think it was that bad. It was like, "Oh, you wouldn't vote for an Australian or something." She's like, "Oh, he threw shade at me." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, right, fair enough. I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have put my thing on Instagram," but it wasn't like that much shade. And then she's gone and thrown all this shade on me, and it's like, it is what it is. You know, I'm not here to throw shade back. You know, we just weren't at odds in the game, put it that way. Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a rivalry going there. You know, we've since started messaging each other and trying to get at least on talkable terms, you know, because I wish, you know, her all the best in life, you know, if she chooses to go back on the, you know, to the Olympics, or whether she chooses to stay with the challenge. You know, I still wish her the best. But anyway, sorry, back on your thing with Sarah, Danny, and Emily, and trying, you know, it's really hard to sort of break into their group. You're right. I did feel that in our house as well, and I found it really funny for me that was it Sarah said to, "Oh, Tori is so far up Casey's ass." I'm like, "Yeah, but Emily's so far up your ass. Like, what's the difference?" Anyway, I just thought that was a really funny comment by Sarah. A, I thought it was true, but B, I thought it was funny. And, you know, I felt like she also had, Emily up her ass as well. So it's like, what's the difference? Like,
it benefits them. That's the difference, I think.
Yeah, I know. Whilst I love what Danny's doing this season, I've got absolutely no hate towards Danny. It's just like what I'm seeing online is everyone seems to be hating on Tori and Jordan, and Danny's like, "Oh, you know, she's got too many number ones." She literally has 2 number ones, and Danny has 2, like Emily. And so I don't know. I think it's the same there. So I find that a bit odd, but I also think that, you know, Tori trying to nominate themselves multiple times is just, I see why Danny's frustrated. Like, I don't get why you would nominate yourself like that. That's so dumb.
Thank you.
So dumb.
No, I went on a huge tirade on my last Tiny Table Talk talking about that. Like, why would you even want to volunteer yourself, especially this late in the game?
Mind you, I'm all for it because it wasn't me. So you guys go volunteer yourself. It was really funny this week though. Even sorry, I'm jumping around a bit, but it was really funny even this week though with Tori trying to throw herself in, and then Jordan as well, because like they were like saying this, and me and Casey, they're like, "Man, this ain't gonna happen. Like, there's no way. Like, why even doing this?" I don't know whether it was for show, and it was really funny that the honor comment by Jordan, because he's like, "Oh, you know, legends play with honor. I'm gonna throw myself in," you know, and then 5 minutes later, he's doing a deal with Emily, which would ultimately put Casey in. Like, ultimately put Casey in. Like, we were going in anyway. Let's be honest. We were probably going in anyway, but A, you didn't need to do that deal, so that's dumb. And B, now that you've done that deal, you're, you know, making 100% it's going to be Casey. So I didn't know that happened, and that is technically working against us without, like, indirectly working against us, I guess you could say. So I thought that was pretty sneaky. I was like, "Oh, okay. I didn't know that happened." That was very interesting. I knew afterwards, like, after the end of later on I found out.
Okay.
Anyway.
And I did want to ask you about that. Like because there's only 6 teams / 4 teams that are voting. Like, how much did you know about like Tori and Jordan? Like, how much did that float around the house before the vote that they were like kind of contemplating going in? Because in the end, it seems like they're like yelling it across the house to each other.
Pretty much everyone in the house knew it. Pretty much everyone in the house, and everyone in the house knew that it probably wasn't going to happen because, yeah, as I said, at the end of the day, I know Danny, he's a smart player, and good on him for going, what are you doing, Tori? Because I would have done the same thing if I was in his shoes, you know? And same with Kaz, you know? Kaz being like, no, what are you doing? And mind you, I did not step in, and I wasn't about to step in to stop them because that would have been bad for my game. But if I was them, I would have, and you know, if I wanted to, I would have 100% advised them, hey, yeah, you should tell them to stop doing that because ultimately it's probably going to be me and Casey, which is, again, why I got so confused about Jordan doing a deal. Like, it was always going to be Casey and myself. I knew that Emily had it out for me ever since episode 5. I'd drawn the line in the sand. Mind you, she didn't come for me straight away. But, you know, I did felt like, you know, ever since then, I was sort of trying to fight for my life in the game. You know, I felt like every nomination, it was either me up for nomination or Emily, you know. Mind you, I wasn't coming for her, and it was clear, you know, because straight after, you know, we went for bananas. To be honest, I would have rather them out, and then I ended up getting paired with Casey, so I couldn't get Jordan out. I would have loved to get Jordan out before the finals. So hopefully we can do that next week. I just feel like they're just so good. Jordan, Wes, bananas, they're the 3. Oh, and maybe Darrell, but I didn't want to get Darrell out because he's with Kiki. So I was like, nah, Kiki can come too. Yeah, she can come to the finals, but unfortunately it didn't play out that way, you know.
I wanted to bring this up real quick because I there's so many things I want to touch on. But real quick, since you brought up Darrell, we see in the beginning of episode 10, like everybody's coming back from the elimination. Darrell and Kiki win, and he's telling you to make bacon. And then you say, you make me bacon. And then you end up making him bacon. How many times did you guys make bacon for each other? And how close throughout the progress of this game did you get close with Darrell and Kiki? Because it just seems like you guys were an awesome trio.
Yeah, I wish they had showed more relationships, even with other people in the game, like as in myself and other people, and myself and Darrell, and even like, you know, other people's relationships, because I don't feel like this season they got the fun side of it. And there was so much fun in the house. Like Theo and Kaz were like going at it like all the time. Like there was just so much fun that was had in the house that they didn't display. That did happen. I'm glad that bacon moment made it, because I actually hadn't made Darrell bacon at all the entire season. It was after every elimination. It was like the thing he did was he'd come home. He wasn't in it. I don't think. Even if he was in the elimination, which I don't think he was much, not until later, or not until that episode. He would come home and make bacon and like have a feast afterwards, and then I'll jump on and have a few bits of bacon. I'll be like, oh yeah, I have a few bits of bacon. So then that time when he got home, I'm like, oh, you're going to be making some bacon? Because he always made bacon. He's like, no, you make bacon. I'm like, oh, fair enough. Like I'll make the bacon, because he'd just been in elimination. So yeah, it was just a really cool moment. I think he actually might have ended up cooking it. Even I said I was going to make it. So sorry, Darrell, but he cooked good bacon. But yeah, no, that's what I mean. I felt like there was lots of those fun moments in the house that just unfortunately didn't get shown.
Trust us, we all, and I think I speak for the audience, that we wish more of those moments were shown at the end of the day, because some of the stuff feels like, I don't know, I'm ripping my hair out with somebody, like people's strategy or lack thereof of wanting to make a decision at the end of the day. So I think we would have rather have seen more of everybody just like getting to be together at certain points. But I do want to bring up, because we have been talking about Casey quite a bit, and your partnership there. When Amber decides to leave and you get paired up with Casey, how much did you talk, or how close were you and Casey up to that point in the game, to where when you got paired up together? Were you guys talking quite a bit, or was it just game related, or just like barely acquaintances at that point?
We're talking a little bit. Like she asked me a little bit about Ninja before, but not too much. We did have a few game talks though, especially in elimination when we got rid of bananas. There was actually a lot more that went into that than got showed on the screen. Like, yeah, a lot more. Actually, I'll go into it, because it was Kellyanne's mainly idea, which is the way they portrayed it was entirely, and it wasn't entirely Kellyanne's like thing. It was a pretty big group effort between, I felt like, myself, her, and Jody. we were the main instigators of it, and we were sort of gathering together, and we're like, okay, yeah, we got the number. Like Kellyanne sort of got the numbers, and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm trying to figure out how to manipulate the other numbers. I'm like, okay, so because there was a voting order. It doesn't show it on the TV, but wherever you sat down was where you started the vote. So what we did or what I came up with was, okay, so Ben and Casey, that's when I was sort of talking a bit of game with them. I'm like, oh, they're sort of on board, but they're not really on board. They don't really want to go against Bananas, I'm assuming because of future seasons, which is fair enough. But they were sort of like, well, we're probably not going to stalemate it. And I'm like, okay, so if you think it's going to be a stalemate, you'll vote our way. And Ben was like, yeah, 100%. And Casey's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I assume she just didn't want to go against Bananas. It's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, Ben, are you going to do it? And Ben's like, yeah, we'll do it as long as it's not a stalemate. So then we came up with the idea, or mainly I came up with the idea, and Jody, of who to vote first. So I said to Jody, okay, here's the deal. Jody, you sit at the end that normally finishes the voting. And then we got Ben and Casey. We told them, hey, you sit at the starting end, because you could always get a seat at the starting end. Nobody wanted to start the voting. Like at the starting end, you could always find a seat, because you had people running down the stairs to get seats and sit where they wanted to vote and whatnot. So Ben and Casey, Jody and Ben Ha then sat at the opposite end of the table to Ben and Casey, and then the producers go, okay, you guys at that end start, like sort of towards Ben and Casey. And then who was it? It was Jody goes, I'm going to start the votes if that's all right. And the producer goes, and Bananas goes, yeah, that's sweet. So Bananas almost was like, yeah, all right, sweet. We'll start at the other end of the table. And then so Jody and Ben started the votes, which meant that by the time it got to Ben and Casey, they knew it was going to be a stalemate if they voted the way of USA. So then they just had a decision to make, and fortunately for us, it fell in our favor, and they voted Bananas and Justine, which was good, because I didn't want Bananas or Jordan in the game. So them going against each other, one of them's guaranteed to go home. No complaints from me.
That's super interesting. And that's a bit of strategy that I wish we would have seen played out. Unfortunately, It seems like they pick and choose a lot of people that they want to put up in certain lights. And I mean, you and Theo and some other players just kind of, I don't know, because you're not part of like maybe the core MTV people, or not kicking up a whole bunch of drama with your own partner, that they're not going to show you as much, which is just, I think, unfortunate.
I think the other thing, because I definitely said that into my interviews, but I think the other thing is with that as well is they really haven't showed the audience how the voting works at all. Because the way I reckon it should have worked is at the start of the vote, it didn't matter who started, but at the start of the vote, you should have wrote down the two names that you wanted to vote for, and then you publicly say it, and you can't change from that vote, depending on what other people vote. Because that made it really disadvantageous to vote first. And it made it really advantageous to vote last. Because if all the votes are polling in one area and you're the last vote and it doesn't matter, you pretty much get away with not doing anything. But whoever voted it first, gets all the blame for it. So I think perhaps that could have been a little bit better, and I'm guessing that's why they didn't want to show where people sat in the voting order, because there was multiple times, even in my interviews, I said, the voting order matters massively in this game. And it was like key moments like that with Ben and Casey being last. And even the week that Casey and I went in, or became a partnership, and then we went in, if we were the last vote, we could have stalemated it forever, because we weren't the last vote. We were the second last vote, which I thought were the last, which is why it's stuffed up. Because if we have then voted Tori and Danny, Sarah was going to change her vote to Tori and Danny, which means it would have been Tori and Danny going in. In hindsight, I should have done that. Hell yeah. But I looked at Casey, and that's when I was like, oh, well, I was like, oh, well, you want to go in? She's like, she looked at me and she's like, oh, you want to go in type thing? Like, I don't want to vote against Tori if she's actually going to go in. She only wanted to vote against Tori if it was going to be a stalemate, which it was the first time round, which is why we voted that way. And then the second time, it was like, okay, now you're putting your friend in if you vote that way, or possibly, because Sarah and Theo might not have changed their vote, but they had the option to, and they were like, I don't know whether they bluffed us, because they might have bluffed us hard if they did. Hats off to you, Sarah. But she was like making out like Danny was across the room saying, yep, vote me to Sarah pretty much. Vote us in. Stuff it, he'd had enough. So then me and Casey then burnt our vote on Jordan and Kaz, which meant that we were going in pretty much. And I knew Tristan and Kellyanne were going to pick us to go in, because I felt like Tristan and Kellyanne, again, you don't see much of it, but Tristan and Kellyanne, Tristan in particular was super close with Kiki. Like super close. Like it was Tristan's number one. So when he had to pick between Kiki and me, he was ultimately going to save Kiki.
Now, I think that's super interesting because I think from somebody who watches like All Stars or the All Star series, we kind of fall back on like, well, maybe Kellyanne and Darrell have way more of a connection than Casey, which I feel like that's of course going to happen. But to hear that it also leads into Tristan having this connection with Kiki, that also kind of probably ties into everything. Like, it's interesting.
Tristan
now
and Kiki were close, like super close. Yeah,
See,
you don't see it, do you?
I wish.
And me and Tristan were super close, but we were close, but not as close. I knew I wasn't as close. Like that was Tristan's number one was Kiki, and you see it in the trivia.
So disheartening because I wish we would have seen that because I don't think we've really seen any of the MVPs like really connected with each other. It's always like the legends and an MVP or like their partners. We don't really see that connection intermingle between the MVPs. So I find that super interesting because it feels like Kellyanne and Tristan were like on an island with only Jody and Benha, but knowing that now Tristan had a lifeline with Kiki, that makes things a lot more.
And I was working with them as well ever since that episode where I voted against Emily, and Emily's like, "Oh, pick a side." Like I'm pretty sure I did then and there, and that's why later on in this episode I was like, "No, I'm not doing deals with you." Like no, I can't offer you anything. I'm sorry. Like we literally had a conversation. The cameras are on us in their bedroom or in Yes's bedroom upstairs, and we'll come together and like, yeah. So hopefully don't vote with us. Vote for us. We don't want to be the vote, but we can't offer you anything. Bad gameplay, maybe, especially after seeing Jordan do a sneaky deal. I was like, oh, maybe I should have done a sneaky deal, but I felt like we'll probably go in no matter what. And you know, I'm a bit of a live by the sword, die by the sword type of person, and I'd picked my path and. That was just unfortunate that she won and she had the power, and good on her. You know, she deserves to put me in. She won. We stalemated it because it was our best shot. Like there's no way we're going to get Sarah and Danny to vote for anyone other than me and Casey anyway. So we already had 2 votes. So we were going in no matter what. And we were like, oh, we'll just let the winners pick then. And then that way, I guess everyone had their hands clean except for Emily. But I had a feeling Emily, I pretty well knew Emily was going to come for us.
Yeah, that was the other question I was going to ask is the whole time in the edit, at least when we get back from the daily, it's the Jordan and Tori kind of going back and forth on whether they want to volunteer or not. Yet somehow when we get to the voting, the next instant that we get to the voting, the next frame, everybody's just cool with a stalemate. And I was like, how did we get to this point? Well, we see go ahead.
It was always going to happen. So Danny was never going to let Tori put himself in. And as I said, I was happy with them too, but it didn't end up working out that way. And Kaz was never going to let, Jordan put themselves in. So as long as our name was on the board, I felt like whoever it was going to be safe anyway. My one regret for that is probably when I was having the chat with Emily. I know we weren't on good terms at that stage, especially inside the game, and I wasn't going to offer her deals, is perhaps I should have enticed Jordan a lot more and been like, hey, look, Jordan, he's a 3-time champ. He's good in finals. Maybe you should go after him. Look, I can't offer you anything, but do you really want to run against him because you've only got a limited amount of time to get him out? Maybe she saw me and Casey as more of a final threat as well. So maybe that's why we would have went in anyway. But I felt like I definitely should have pled my case there, and I didn't. And that's probably my one regret with that. That was probably poor gameplay on my half. I definitely should have pushed her towards voting Jordan, especially after seeing what Jordan pretty much doing a deal, which if it wasn't already solidified it even more. Which is why I thought that was a silly deal. Anyway,
no, I definitely think it was it was being an opportunist. It sounds like from the podcast because it really did think. I don't know if anything
good on them though.
Yeah.
Good on them though. That was such a good gameplay by Emily and Yes. Like seriously, I reckon that's one of the moves of the season because like to get somebody to do a deal like that late in the game is huge. Like that is massive. Yeah. And I think that was, I don't think Jordan would normally do that. I think that was Jordan realizing how wrong he was with the way he treated Kaz and being like, oh, I need to make this up to you type thing. And I think it's more something Kaz maybe wanted to do. And he was like, okay, we'll do something you want to do. Perhaps, I don't know. But that's just what that felt like. But wow, yeah, that was a really, really good game move for Emily and Yes. As long as Jordan and Kaz stick to it. Which we'll find out. We'll find out.
Right.
So.
That's a huge like asterisk that we have to wait to see if they pay up on it. But that brings me to the point of, I don't know if necessarily you have to regret not like putting more out there, because you could have said that he's a 3-time champ. He almost beat you in a swimming comp or something, or how close it was, coming in second place. And he's gotten second place. Him and Kaz got in second place quite a few times on the season. But relative to when they had that deal make to when she talked to you, or when Yes and her talked to you, and I think that you were pretty much the dead set. But once they won, they were like, I want Troy and Casey.
Yeah, but it's like Kellyanne is such a good example of this, and this is why I love Kellyanne so much. You know, she doesn't leave a stone unturned. You know, at the end of the day, she's like, oh well, at least I tried. It didn't work. You know, there was only probably a 5 to 10% chance of it working, if that. But you know, I should have said it 100%. Like, it's not going to affect my gameplay in any way. If I'd have just been like, oh, don't go for me, you should go for, Jordan and Kaz. And the other thing I didn't understand is that a little bit, and why I think it might have worked, and which is why I regret not doing it, is because look at the whole season. Danny and Sarah have been gunning for Jordan and Kaz, and they haven't been able to do it because of their partners, because Theo is protecting Kaz and Tori is protecting Jordan, the two exes. So they're stopping it so much, and that's what they're gunning for. They're trying to get rid of Jordan. And now Emily and Yes have an opportunity to get Jordan and Kaz out, or not get them out, but put them into elimination. And I should have appealed to that, which is where I'm like, oh, I didn't leave that stone, whereas I feel like, now they've gone for us, which is obviously because we're not working with them, which is fine. I've got no issues with her going for me. Like, it's fair enough. I definitely wasn't working with her at that stage. But, perhaps I could have, persuaded them a little bit to go for Jordan and Kaz, because I feel like they'd sort of been trying to get them the whole season. And now all of a sudden they've got their chance to have a shot, and then they don't take it.
Right. And I mean, I've been saying this on a couple of my videos, but it's like, if you send Jordan in, I mean, you're not going to get him on the first one, most likely. And we didn't. Him and Kaz has been in one elimination so far, and then come to this one, and you have the opportunity. At least test it, test the waters, test them going in, because you never know what could happen in elimination. Yeah. So I'm never going to be the one that says don't do it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, I get why they did it, especially with that deal. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I totally get Emily. I've got no dramas with her coming after me, but in hindsight, looking back of it, I definitely should have pitched her to go for Jordan a lot more. And as you said, it probably wouldn't have changed the vote, but hey, at least I would have said it there, and now I wouldn't be looking back on it like I am now, being like, damn, I missed that opportunity,
We'll move on to the elimination in episode 10, because we got through pretty much everything in this episode organically. So Emily and Yes are up there. They say your name. I'm sure you're not like, of course. You're pretty much saying like, of course. I should have just walked down there anyways. What do you think about having to go up against Darrell and Kiki? Very close friends, tight alliance members since the very beginning. What was that for you, going up against them in particular?
Look, it wasn't nice, especially because I know how much Darrell, in particular this season, he really, really wanted to win. And he came here to play this season. I really did feel like he did. And I know he took it hard afterwards. So, it was pretty hard. And Kiki, I've got such a strong bond with Kiki through the Australian season and winning it together. And we talk after the show, after the Australian show, and then we talked after the world show still. And it was tough. But again, I know I'm not, unfortunately it was bittersweet for me. Like, I'm, it was going to be bittersweet either way. Either I'm going home and Kiki and Darrell stay and hopefully they get their chance to win it, or I win and I send them home and I ruin their chance, of winning the whole thing. And I guess at the end of the day, they're not dead. It's not a death sentence. So it's not the end of the world. But while you're in this house and in this experience, it does feel a little bit like that. That's for sure. But I wasn't happy about going up against Kiki and Darrell. I felt like Kiki was like, definitely my number one probably throughout the entire time. She was the one I was willing to ride for the whole time. And me and her were against each other, but that's how that game, that's how the game gets played. People try and stick you against your number ones. And, I'm just grateful at least she got, I was grateful for me and her that at least we got that far together. You can't always have your dream of everyone you want making the finals. It's a hard thing to get to yourself, let alone getting other people there as well. But yeah, that was
true.
that was a cool elimination. What I found interesting was Darrell had asked for Jordan as well, so I thought Yes would have respected that and put in Jordan, especially in a maths, because Yes knew at that stage I was good at maths, because we had done maths puzzles together a lot. And we knew it was going to be a maths question on the other side of that wall. So I thought that was interesting. And I saw ropes and that there, and I was just thinking, maybe I'm a chance not to go in, maybe. But, I'd always prepared to go in. But, yeah, I thought that was interesting. Anyway.
I too thought that was interesting because, I mean, I'll be honest, there's been a lot of people that criticize Darrell on the more recent seasons of whether he wants to come in here, can he still play and everything. I think this season showed that he still can play and still wants to play at a high level. And I think kind of like what you were saying with that, he came in here really wanting to win. And I think at this late in the game, he knew that I either take out Jordan now or I'm just going to go home against the best or send the best home kind of vibe. At the end of this day. So I think that's where proves to me that Darrell really wants to win.
I also think it was one of those eliminations where you could get flustered quite easily, and we have seen Kaz get flustered in the past. So, perhaps even once they got there, Emily could have looked at me like, oh, no, maybe we'll put Jordan and Kaz in. That's my hopeful thinking, but I don't know whether it crossed her mind or not. You'd have to ask her. But I thought it could have been a good opportunity for them to put them in and possibly going home, because it's the ones like that might get Jordan out, the ones with a bit of a maths puzzle in there. And what you didn't see is after we broke through that wall, the plaster wall or whatever it was. Oh, that was, fuck me, that was hard. I mean, sorry, excuse the French, but oh my God. I was like, oh, this will be like the brick wall. I'll just fly through it. And I swung and I went, ooh. It was a really funny moment. But anyway, yeah, after that, there was a box with a lock on it. And it was actually a riddle. I've got it written down. Oh, it's not here, but I've got it written down what the riddle was. You actually had to solve a riddle to get in that box. I'll send it through to you. I'll send a photo of it. So it was something like the first number, the second number is half the first, and the third number is like +5 onto the second number or something. It was like the riddle. So it was a 3-digit code. So like I think it was like it had to be 4, because if you put 8, oh no, that's right. I remember. Sorry, I got that wrong. So it was. I remember it now. It was the first number. Sorry, the second number is half the first number, and the third number is +3 onto the first number. So the first number could either be 8. It could either be 8 and 2 or 4 and 1. But then you had to add 3 onto 8, which you couldn't get 11 to get a 3-digit code. So it had to be 413. 417. Sorry. So anyway, yeah, which was just a little riddle, but I'm assuming they didn't include it because it didn't matter at that point. But yeah, there was a riddle to get the lock open to then do the easy puzzle at the end. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool elimination.
That is really neat to know, because it did seem like at the end when you got through the second wall, that it was just open a box and put a puzzle together. So I'm glad that we know now that there was definitely a second riddle or something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it was a 4 number. Maybe it was 4 number code, and there was a bit more to that riddle, but it was something like. Anyway, I wrote it in my notebook when I got back from the challenge. I wrote in my notebook what the riddle was, because yeah, they seemed pretty impressed. I got it so quickly, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll just write that.
So you win your second elimination. Casey wins her third on the season, which is bizarre to say since you guys are paired up together, but you haven't been paired up for that long. I was actually quite surprised, even though I've been watching this season pretty heavily and I've watched every episode like 3 or 4 times so far, that you and Casey have been in the last 2 of the last 3 eliminations, and you've won both of them. This is quite a different experience than what you were able to do in the Challenge Australia, where you were winning 4 times and then only had to see 1 elimination. Does the eliminations get easier the more times you get sent in, or is it just the same kind of process?
As I said, like for me, it was like, look, I was never afraid of elimination. I get all these vets and even or a lot of the legends and even the MVPs are so scared of elimination. And I get maybe they're not scared, but that's the what I was getting from them. They're like so scared of it. I'm like, well, at the end of the day, I could be on Survivor and I could just get voted off and do nothing, like, and have no chance of, I guess, saving myself. Whereas for me, this was like a second chance. And it was like, hell yeah, you get to go out there, you get to perform and get your, have a second chance at it. And I saw it as like all right, it's do or die. Like, the adrenaline's pumping. It doesn't get easy, I don't feel like, but the adrenaline pumps and it's like, yeah, all right, let's do this. Like, let's go prove to everyone why we deserve to be in the house. And at the end of the day, if you lose, it's still on you. It's still on you. Like, it's like, oh shit, I did bad in that elimination. That's on me. Unless it's something, which I guess is why a lot of the vets and legends and all that are scared of eliminations, because sometimes it can be something so left of field that you just have not as much control over whether you win or lose, no matter how good you are. So I guess that's why they're so scared. But my whole tactic, I wanted to avoid eliminations, but if you have to go in them, you just got to get it done. And I guess when I say I'm not scared of eliminations, it's not that I want to be in them. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't put me in eliminations or come back on in the new season. But it was more, where was I going? It was more, it's part of the game.
Not being afraid of of the moment.
Yeah, not being afraid. Like, to me, that's your moment to shine. The episode is probably you're gonna be in it. It's gonna be about you a bit, and it's like, okay, well, now I just got to go in here, perform. Yeah, you don't want to be there. Yeah, you don't want to be in it, but I wanted to avoid it at all costs, but I'm not scared of it. Whereas I felt like they were avoiding it, and they were scared of it. If that makes sense. That's more of what I was getting at. Yeah, sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent, but yeah,
no, it's all
that's
good.
How I felt.
So. A couple more questions. We'll be wrapping this up in a little bit. So you came into the Challenge Australia. I think you said in the beginning that you were like, oh, I could definitely win this. If I can play my cards right, I could definitely win this. But did you ever think about when you said yes to the challenge and you came on as a fan, knowing of the show, which I think is incredible. I'm so happy that there were some people that actually knew about the show coming on to the show prior to coming on to the show. But did you expect having this much success, not only from winning your first season on the Challenge Australia, but now making it into the top 5 teams where there are MTV legends, global MVPs, other winners, a ton of champions? Did you expect this much success?
Look, I kind of, I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm just confident in my abilities. I kind of did expect a bit of success. I feel like one advantage to having watched a challenge before is, especially when I got invited to Challenge Australia, is I studied tanagrams. I did lots and lots of puzzles, and I'm naturally good at them too. So I knew going into the Challenge Australia, I was going to be very good at puzzles. And then in turn, because of my physical ability, thanks to Ninja Warrior and what I love doing and my passion, I was going to then have the physical ability as well. So I knew I was definitely going to be a threat in the Australian season and do really well. As for Worlds, again, I thought my puzzle ability was going to be decent, because I was like, oh, the legends will be really good at puzzles. And I was actually surprised how good my ability to do puzzles was against the vets. Like, I felt like I was standing up to them, or if not with them, especially with my maths and all the rest of it. And then, same. I felt like I feel like I'm just personally just such a good all-rounder, in my opinion, that it's really hard to eliminate me. I feel like, yes, I can go home, yes, I can get unlucky, but I always felt like if I'm in the competition, I'm a chance. Put it that way. That's why I felt, and I felt like everyone was always going to have a hard time getting rid of me. And especially, again, I feel like my mental fortitude going into it is like, even if your back's up against the wall, even if you got to compete in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eliminations, whatever it is, I'm just going to get it done. Get to the final, win the final, go home, get the money. And, that's just what I had in my mind. And did I believe I could do it? Absolutely. Did I think I would do it? Maybe not. I think at times I was like, oh my God, there's Jordan, there's Wes, there's Bananas. Like, I knew, especially in the second one, that I was going to have to work for it. But yeah, it was definitely something that I felt like I could do. It's just whether, again, all the pieces fall together, because there's a lot of luck in the challenge as well. As much as I want to say I'm a really good all-rounder, there's still a hint of luck involved. Cards have to fall your way, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Prime example, Amber getting pregnant, Ben getting sick, and now I'm, pushing shit uphill in eliminations because we've lost the numbers because of a move I did earlier on. So yeah.
As somebody who watches and makes and now has made, I can't believe I've made over 900 videos for my channel. And which I think 93 to 94% of them, probably even more percentage than that, is all based on challenges and players. I would deem you a better overall rounder of a competitor. I mean, you saying that you know what to expect. You've watched. I'll ask you what the first season was, but even if you just watched like a handful of episodes or a season and knew that you needed to bulk up on mats or puzzles, I have to say that's more than some of the vets that keep coming on to do like 7 to 8 to 9 seasons, and they do no puzzle work. They just decide that. Yeah.
So sorry to cut you off there, but I actually had a really good conversation with Jordan about this, and it was such a good conversation where we were like, because we were saying the same thing. Me and Jordan found it insane that people aren't training to come in on a challenge. Like, what are you there for? Like, we were training puzzles, he would train running, and we're saying that, and we're saying in particular with the girls, we felt like a lot of them come in unprepared, and if they just literally train pretty hard leading into it, they could be a very big standout. And it's same with the men. Like, I'm not just saying it's just the girls, but it's so easy to do. And why aren't people doing that? And I think that's the competitive side of myself and Jordan, who are like, okay, well, we see a way we can get like an advantage. We're going to take it. Hell yeah, we are. Like, we're going to go train outside the show. We're going to go do puzzles. We're going to, go for that run that other people might not go for. So yeah, I find it insane people don't train beforehand. Like, it is such a cool experience. Why wouldn't you want to do well? Why wouldn't you want to train? Like, that got me. That got me
train
confused.
In different ways than just gym and muscle building. I mean, I've heard some 100%. People say, like, I've just downloaded a math app, and that just helps me with some of the challenge math equations, and they are running like a mile ahead of everybody just doing a math app for like 15 minutes a day. But even that, some people just don't take that extra step. So, I think it shows with you, though. I mean, that's how you've been able to have such success in not only a Challenge Australia, where some people can say, oh, it's a spinoff full of new players, but now you're doing the same thing here and doing it in a different way, but you're still kicking serious tail on the season, getting all the way up to the top 5 teams. And who knows, we haven't seen episode 11 yet. So you could be back in the finals for the second time in 2 seasons. I mean,
on that too, I think Emily realized that in this season, because she's obviously very physically gifted, and I didn't think she was too good at puzzles, to be honest. But her and Yes actually had and this is what they don't show you, her and Yes actually had a really cool connection where Yes was giving her a whole bunch of maths equations and in a little diary and a whole bunch of different puzzles that Emily had to solve. But they're the 1%ers that you do in the house that are ultimately going to help you later on. And it was cool to see, again, Emily, great competitor, her doing the same things that I was sort of doing as well. So yeah, I think that's massive, and you got to do that, especially while you're in the house. And you'd have other people in the house who would just literally, you wouldn't see them in the gym. Not that you got to lift weights in the gym, but you got to stay active and do running or whatever. But you wouldn't see them in the gym, and you wouldn't see them doing puzzles or anything. It's like I'm not going to tell you to do them, but you should be 100%. I think you should anyway.
No, exactly. And you have people saying like, I need my puzzle queen or puzzle kings. It's like, if you just train just a little bit harder, you could be your own puzzle queen. You could be your own puzzle king.
And I agree. And it's not that you're going to be the greatest at puzzles, because puzzles are such a abstract concept. That can trip up anybody. But I feel like the more you train them and the more you do them, the more likely you are to not get tripped up on them and not look like an absolute tool. But, as I said, it can still happen to the best of us.
So I think it's interesting that you say that you, when you got the call to go to the challenge, you were training in all these different puzzles. I actually, after watching the Challenge 38 and then specifically your season as well, everybody seemed to have gotten tripped up on the new puzzle that I hadn't seen on the challenge ever. And it was the one that you had to do right before going to sleep right before the finals. I call it the 8 puzzle, but it's something else with all the numbers and you have to make them fit.
We'll call it the 8 puzzle.
I bought that puzzle on Amazon because I was like, I want to see how hard it is. And I'll tell you right now, it was freaking hard. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't do it, or you never knew that puzzle existed. So it was
so hard. But you know, the worst thing about that puzzle is when you get given it, or when we got given it, we didn't know how it ended, if that makes sense. You didn't see it complete. You'd already seen it complete, so you knew you had to replicate the triangles. We were trying to put them on diagonals, so it wouldn't be triangles, so they were squares or whatever it was. And it was like, we were trying all different ways because it wasn't working the way we thought that we were meant to build it. So you'd try totally abstract ways for like half an hour, and you don't see that, you know what I mean? Because you've probably seen the end puzzle. So yeah, you're right. It's a super hard puzzle to begin with, and then B, if you don't know how it's meant to go in, like as in if you don't know the end product, I guess like you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, if you don't see the picture at the end, you've sort of got to make it up as you go. You don't know, where the blue bits are or whatever. So I felt like there was a lot of that in that puzzle as well that, made it even harder than it already was. That was a hard puzzle.
So I'll be honest. I knew what the end puzzle was supposed to look like. I watched 4 spinoffs and the Challenge 38, or 3 spinoffs and the Challenge 38. So I knew what the the end product was supposed to be. But I cannot talk smack about anybody who couldn't figure out that puzzle, because even knowing what the puzzle was supposed to look like, it took me over 2.5 days of working on it. So I have no room to talk. If people were able to do it, I was like, do it.
It was hard. Took us like an hour and a half, hour and 40.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Because like I said, 2.5 days I was working on it. And I'm not saying like I only worked on it for an hour a day. I'm talking about like I worked on it while sitting in my chair while trying to watch like an NBA basketball game. I was working on it for like 6 hours a day, just like trying to like figure it out. And it was not working. It was I would lose my mind.
Because we figured out like one of the pieces that obviously had like it just had to go together. So we figured that out pretty early. And then from there, we just tried all different combinations from there. But yeah, and how bad was it though? You always seem to get like that one little bit wrong, and you're like, no, it just doesn't fit over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah,
like, I think your puzzle was steel or something like that. Like it was a metal. Mine was, I bought a smaller wooden one. So some of the pieces were kind of like cut weirdly, and there was one point where I just kind of stuck the piece in the middle, and it somehow fit. So all of them were in there. It just wasn't correct, but I was counting that as a small victory, even though it wouldn't have counted.
Fair enough.
This is a question that I get asked a ton of times. And I think as a fan of any show or anything, everybody always wants to know, like, when did you jump in? When was the first season that you watched? And what made you a fan of a certain show? So what was the first season of the challenge that you watched? And what was about the challenge that kind of got you hooked on it at a fan level?
I've watched parts of War of the Worlds 2. So my partner was watching the whole of War of the Worlds 2, and I'll just come on for an episode or two, and I'd watch a couple, and then I was like, oh, kind of getting into it. And then I think it was the next one, Double Agents. It was Double Agents with the red, I think it was, with the red skull.
Total Madness, I believe.
After War of the Worlds 2? Total Madness?
Yeah, sure? I think it was Total Madness.
Oh, I missed that then. Must have been after that. Double Agents. So then she started watching Double Agents, and I come in and I was seeing Double Agents, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I just sort of started watching it because for me, coming from, as I said, it keeps coming up, but like I'm such a competitive person. I loved the fact that you could absolutely hate somebody to bits, hate them and want to get them out of the game. But then you chuck them in elimination, they win, they come back. And then you got to do it again. They win, they come, so you've always got that opportunity to come back into the game. And for me, that was the most appealing thing. Like Big Brother, you get voted out. I hate that shit. That sucks. This one, you have to get voted out, and then you have to lose the elimination. Even if it's a bullshit elimination, you still got to lose, And I feel like the game is almost always in your hands. That's why I love it. I felt like the whole time, the game didn't play out the way I wanted it at the moment. I've been in 2 eliminations of the last 3, but I didn't get voted out straight away. I get to fight for it. I come back in. I get a week off, and then I get voted back in. I fight for it. I come back in the house, and then I can fuck shit up. I can go after people, So that's what I love about it.
I think that's what also hooked me as well. That was one of the aspects, because I, like you brought up Big Brother. I grew up watching Big Brother. I grew up watching Survivor, and it was always the vote outs. It was always the social component that always came down to it. And sometimes you were just unlucky, and people just had like something against you, and you would just get voted out. But with the challenge, it was something completely different I've never seen before, where it's like you have a lifeline. You have a way of going in, and then, like you said, control some aspect. You don't know what the game is going to be, but at least you have your abilities, and it's not like you're completely out of the game once you're voted into elimination. So
exactly, and that's what I love about it. I think a lot of the fans do too, and that's why if you look at like all the fans, and this is what I love about the fans too, is you could win like every daily, and they still probably won't like you much, but you win like an elimination, an epic elimination, everyone's like, "Oh my god, did you see that? That was sick!" Like so part of like, so you think about that when you're on the challenge as well. I do as a fan, because I'm like, oh, part of me wants to go in, but part of me doesn't want to like look like a dickhead going in and then going sending myself home, But you want to go in and you want to have that epic moment, and I feel like that's where the epic moments are made, and that's such a cool dynamic and cool thing about the challenge.
I think that coming from you, who had one of the more epic eliminations in recent challenge seasons, I think that winning it and coming back into the game and then ultimately winning that season, I think that it's super sick and super exciting.
And I was so happy, I guess, to be a part of like a moment like that. Did I think about it at the time? Hell no. I just wanted to hold on and win. Do I regret doing it now that I've won? No. Did I regret doing it at the time? Absolutely. I was so banged and battered going into a final. I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. Like, I felt like, oh, what could I have done better to not end up in there? And then, I ended up winning, so it ended up good. So I was pretty happy. But, at the time, I was thinking it wasn't a good decision. I don't know that it was my decision to end up in, but I was just thinking of how I could have avoided it. But now that it's all said and done and, it plays out on TV, I'm like, nah, that was sick. I'm so glad I ended up in that. I'm so glad I ended up nearly broken and beaten up just for that moment, So, mind you, if anybody hasn't watched that, go watch that elimination, because I reckon you'll be pleasantly surprised and impressed. Especially because that's like one of my big things I stand for, is like, I always believe that a small person, if you're strong enough and you put your mind to it and you train hard enough, you can always, overcome your obstacles, which is, for me, being small and overcoming somebody bigger in something like a pole wrestle or hall brawl, because those are my biggest challenges on the challenge. They're not the other things. It's those is what I feel like. So it was cool to be a part of that and actually experience it and prove it.
The last question is, what's next for Troy? What would you like to do? Would you like to go do another season of Ninja Warrior? Are you training for that? Would you want to do another season of the challenge? What do you want to do coming up in like the next year or two?
Yeah, probably next year or two. Well, I'm going to go travel to the United States, so I'm going to do that first. But I'll probably, I really want to focus on getting back on a challenge. I would love to get back on a challenge. I love the competitive aspect to it. I love the way it's playing out on TV. I love the social strategy, and that's something I'm getting new to. I don't feel like I'm perfect at, and I want to improve. But I'd love to get back on a challenge again. But, I'm also still training for Ninja. I believe it's been such a good base for me for the challenge. I'm still training it. So if Australian Ninja Warrior are going to go around again, I'll go for that again as well. Why not have both? So that's what's next for me. Hopefully I'll get back on a challenge, but if they don't call me back, that's all good. I'll keep trying, and at least I'm in the mix now, that if it's not this season, hopefully they pick me for the next season or season after that. So I'd love to compete on the challenge again.
As someone or as a fan, an audience member for a while, and then watching all of the spinoffs, I have to say that like you in particular, as well as Kiki, have been like such like standouts on both seasons that you played on so far, that I think that to me, you two would be like top of my list of wanting to see come back and even be on the main season. I would love to see how you compete alongside other MTV challengers and maybe other global MVPs that could make the transition over. I think that would be really, really awesome to see how you play on a I would say a bigger season. I think this season's big, but it's only like 12 episodes, whereas that season's like 22 and you're in like a bus getting flung around. Well, you also did that as well, but
yeah. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. And the episodes are longer, so you'll be able to build your character a bit more as well. I was shattered that they're only 45-minute episodes because I felt like that extra 15 minutes they literally could have spent easily on fun house stuff. But anyway, it is what it is. They've got limited time, and I understand why they made that decision. But I think they're portraying the whole thing pretty well for what they've got. I'd be keen to run it back and go on another season. Getting a few more eliminations, hopefully get a few wins, win it, and mainly I just want to be honest, I want the money. I want to win the American one because it's way more money. Any of them, this one, next one, all of them. Like, man, so good. Like they pay. I feel like the prize money is incredible, especially compared to the Australian one. Like, mind you, the 100,000 did help, and it was great. Australian, mind you, so it's probably like 75,000 US, maybe a bit less.
okay.
So that did help a lot, but man, it's what 250,000 each for you and your partner. Like, whew, this one, and then for the main season, but $500,000 if it's split between two people. Whew, big money.
I think you would be like the perfect person to put onto a flagship show because you have that want to reach higher levels, to reach higher goals, and then also you want that cash, you want the prize, and I think that's also important. Like to see the end goal. And to want it so bad, I think, is important when trying to compete on something like the challenge. Yeah,
absolutely. Especially, just it's just such a life-changing amount of money. And for me, who wants to renovate this house that I'm currently sitting in, so it'd be huge. And that's the other thing I think I struggled with a little bit on the main show and that is they're like, what's your reason for being here? Because everyone's got these good things of like, I want to build a family, I'm doing it for my family back home. And I guess for me, I struggled to express this season, even last season, like, why do you want to win? I want to do it for my family and all those things, but I don't know, I just like winning. I don't know, I'm just very competitive and I just want to win, and the money. Like, I just want to win, like, so badly. I don't know, it's hard to explain because it's just this will to win, and you see it in a pole wrestle. Like, there was just, I don't know. I didn't do that pole wrestle for anybody else other than myself. I don't know. I just wanted to win. Like, it's just so hard to explain. And I guess that's a main thing they've highlighted for me in this season, which I would have loved them to highlight. But because I feel like a lot of people can relate with it as well. Like, I know that you get the good family stories, but that's what everyone's is almost. But, I just want to win, and it's just hard to explain to people. I just like winning. I want to win. I want to be the best person I can possibly be, I guess, is a good way to put it. I just want to be the best person I can possibly be.
And I think that's valid. I think that's a valid reason that they should highlight, because like you said, they always talk about the families. They always talk about, like, you have to have like that motivation, and it has to always come from the heart. But sometimes it's just like, I want to do it. Like, I just want to do it just so I can do it. And I think that's also valid, but we don't highlight it as much. And even talking about Ninja Warrior, trying to kind of like circle back, every time I watch American Ninja Warrior, they always have the package, and it's always about like the family, the story. And I'm just like, who's just here just to do it, just to see if they could like just compete and get it done. So yeah,
I guess I'm one of them people.
There we go.
So yeah, definitely. But I don't think, in all fairness, I don't think I expressed it very well in those interview rooms, because upon reflection, it's a lot easier to get your emotions out. Whereas sometimes in those interviews, it's really hard, especially if like you're bouncing off somebody else. Like, for example, you today even just asked me questions and sort of leading me into subjects that I can then talk about. It makes it so much easier than sitting in front of a camera and just them asking you like these questions that you're like, oh, okay, did that happen? Oh, okay, yeah, it did happen. Yeah, I don't quite remember that. That was like, a week ago or whatever. And, you're in the game. Yeah. So it does get hard. Yeah. So I think that's a bit I struggle with on the challenge the most, was like the interviews and, the stuff that probably, especially in the Australian season, that all the Bachelor girls are probably really good at, or were really good at. That's a bit I struggle with. The competition wise, no dramas. I can do that all day, every day.
I mean, put you on the side of a truck with pegs and you are calm, cool, and collected, but in a confessional room, it's a little bit steamier. It's a little bit
harder, but it's all good.
I want to say thank you so much for coming on here. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of yours. I really enjoyed watching you on your Challenge Australia, and then come to see that you are doing exactly what I was hoping and expecting from you to be working here on the Challenge World Championships on such a higher level of competition, in my opinion, that I just really appreciate you taking time, sacrificing sleep, being here early morning your time to come talk to me about a show that I'm very passionate about, that we're both very passionate about. And I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, it was my pleasure. Like, no, thank you so much for having me. You know, I really appreciate it, and it's nice to be able to, you know, speak your mind and speak your voice. You know, because sometimes you know, you've seen on a show the confessionals don't show it all. So it's really nice to be able to have a platform and somebody that's willing to have me just talk about literally shit that happened in my life. So it's so cool. And everybody, you know, to see people watching it and see people be fans, you know, I just hope that I've helped them in some way back home, and hopefully they can go out and try something they otherwise wouldn't have, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've kind of inspired me. I mean, saying that you're 5'6", I mean, I'm not that much taller, and knowing that you can go through so many things on the show and be able to come out victorious, I think shows that like anything is possible, you know, especially to somebody like me who is kind of vertically challenged in some ways. Some would say
vertically challenged. Don't worry, I know what that feels like. I'm very vertically challenged.
But again, thank you. And an invitation, I extend an invitation to you that whenever you want to come back and speak your mind on anything, challenge or not, the invitation is always open. The door is always open. And yeah, I again, thank you so much. And I hope everything that you want to accomplish happens, and keep going on.
Let's hope so. Thank you so much for having me.